Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. And we have a special guest again. We love veterans. We love veterans who own brewing companies. And not because we're all big drinkers, although Nick might like beer too every now and then. It's because we love veterans. And we have got a great guest for you today. The guy's name is Rich Fierro, and him and his wife own Atrevida Beer Company out of Colorado. Rich is going to join us and talk to us about, some of the struggles that they had and some of the exciting things about what it took to start this beer company. By the way, it's award winning. I mean, it's like a laundry list of awards these guys have won. So we are honored to have them join us today. With that said, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell. Let's get started.
I'm Jess Fierro, founder and brewmaster at Atrevida Beer Company. Our award-winning beer is truly handcrafted. Nothing is automated. From milling to packaging, each step lends to the unique and bold taste that is Atrevida. And everyone who comes to Atrevida is familia.
Come by, have a beer, make yourself at home at Atrevida Beer Company, where
diversity is on tap. Salud!
Rich.
What's going on?
What's going on, brother? Well, Rich, I'm very excited to hear and for you to share your story. I know we caught up a little bit before, but just going from active duty, starting your business, moving along to a civilian career in addition to the business, just such an amazing story. I'd love to just get an idea. Can you share with everyone, what was your MOS starting out?
I was an artillery officer, so a 13 Alpha has nothing to do with beer. really is.
You drank a lot of beer, though, right?
Yeah, I mean that was part of it, right? And so you're in between the trails, and that's what you do. But at the end of the day, I was an artilleryman, but we did a lot of infantry stuff, both in Iraq and Afghanistan. So did 4 tours there, and it was probably some of the best times in my life, in my career.
That's amazing. And now going from artillery officer, right, and deployment, and again, you were bouncing all over the U.S. as well, right? Never stayed in one duty station very long. But how did you get into brewing in the first place?
Yeah, so that's a funny part about this story. So my wife didn't like beer at all, and then we ended up getting stationed in Germany. And at the time, the euro was like it was $1.50, almost $1.75 to the euro. So we were paying, all this money for mixed drinks when we would go out. And I was like, dude, the beer here is cheaper than the water if it's in a bottle, So she started trying the beer, started enjoying it a little bit better. I mean, we all grow up the same. You drink you drink what your dad drinks, and if your dad's not drinking anything but Bud, then that's kind of what you know. So we were out there in Germany, great time. We did a tour of Veldebrau, which is a small little brewery in Plankstadt, and she fell in love with it. And then we just started going to different breweries in Czech Republic and Italy, monasteries, stuff like that. So we got into it while we're there, just because it was something that was more adult, because you got the kids, so you're running around all these touristy spots. And we had a chance to kind of go relax and have a beer somewhere. So it was kind of, that was a transition for her. And then she came back here. We got stationed at Carson, which, I mean, growing up, I had no idea this was like the mecca of craft beer. And so we ended up in Colorado, and my wife and I were going to all these breweries. There's tons of them out here. So there's like 400 now. But when we got here, it was about 100 breweries and 5 in the Springs. So we would rotate to these breweries on the weekends. I was still on duty. If I was still stationed, or if I was here not deployed, we'd go hang out at the breweries, and that's where she kind of just volunteered and started working. So she jumped in there, and it was a weird moment because we were sitting at the bar, and it was the smallest brewery I've ever been in. It's about 100 square feet, and the guy, the brewer owner is the guy serving you, and he's literally at a bar, like it's right next to your table. So yeah, there's no getting away from the guy. So we became friends with him, and finally she just goes, "Hey, I think I want to try and brew beer. And he was like, well, you got nails and all this stuff, and you're a girl, right? But he didn't want to say that. And she was like, no, I'll be here at 6. I'm ready to go. And so she was a hairstylist, and then she was volunteering as a brewer. And I was still in the Army, and then she just kept going and ended up, what was it, 07 when she started. And then in 2017, she ended up on an accident, on a whim, ended up in a TV show because the girls that she worked with in Denver recommended her for this contest. And she ended up on the show Beerland. And so she won the first season with her homebrew. So it's a very weird story. Like she started in the commercial side of the house and then homebrewed after that. So she learned backwards, which is usually not the way folks learn. It's usually at home, and then you go to a brewery and try and work in there. So she went backwards and then we ended up starting our own thing. After she won that show, we were like, hey, dude, what are we, like Kelly Clarkson here? Let's do this. So we you do everything in the military to avert risk, right? You always want to avert the risk. And I'm a very risk averse guy. She is not. She will jump in there. It's very creative. So she jumps in there. And so I'm measuring this whole thing. I'm like, I'm getting out of the Army. What are we, are we really going to do this? And so we were for about 4 years researching, doing all the work to try and start a brewery. And when she won that contest, everything kind of lined up. And when we had a guy that was selling when he was one of the first 5 breweries here in the Springs, he was selling his brewery. So we bought that, and she made a great deal. And we've been running from there. So we're expecting some good things coming forward. But she, honest to God, just fell in love with this thing, and then it brought me into it as well. So I can't brew. I don't want to. I'm too impatient for that. I'm risk averse, but I'm not patient at all. So I'm one of those guys. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna continue trying to do my thing with the military. So I'm a defense contractor as well over at Fort Carson, and I teach a part of Mission Command. So I was teaching that, and then now I'm like the deputy site lead there. So I have more managerial stuff that I do at that place. And then I decided to get my master's, why not? So I did that last year. I finished that. And then we still run this brewery. So we're having a good time with it. I have found time only because my kids are older. So my son is 27. He lives in LA now. And my daughter is 20. She's now 22, but she's been working at the brewery since she was 18 or 19. Yeah. So about 4 years ago. And she's been brewing with her mom since she was 7. So yeah, it's been wild. So my daughter's actually in San Diego State, getting her master in brewery certificate. So she's going to bring the school side of the house to the brewery. And when my wife did all this by hand and just by, hands-on learning as we go.
I think you made and for anyone that may have missed this, right? A great point. It doesn't have to be a light switch, right? It can be a dimmer as you're starting out.
Yeah.
You're bootstrapping. It wasn't just all in all of a sudden. It was a gradual progression to the point of, hey, now's the time, right? The stars have aligned. Let's lean in. Yeah.
And I mean, I'll be honest. Every industry you jump into, you're never going to know when that right time is. I mean, we went into the craft beer thing when it was kind of starting to peak. So we were now there's 35, and at the end of the day, that was in 5 years. I mean, so that's just a boom of tons of different options for your consumer. And it's the Springs. It's a small town, man. So it's not like I'm in the middle of Denver just cutting up millions of people. It's not a thing. So we've worked really hard to kind of keep this a small family thing, and that is why it's been easier for us to do the risk averse piece to it, because we wanted to make sure that we kept and retained our lifestyle, and then we went in. There's a lot of folks will jump into a business and everybody says it, give it everything, jump in there, quit your job, execute. Okay, but if you're not living too well in a year, you're gonna have some problems, and that's kind of where we were like, hey, we had that base. The military thing allowed me to have that other career. And then my wife can just run, and she's been doing a hell of a job with this brewery.
To that point, so starting out, right, like you made the point, you don't really know what you don't know when you start out. There's a lot of different things to learn. What are some lessons that you learned along the way that you find to be extremely valuable now?
So there's two ends of this for me, because it's that business, the owning the business part changed everything for me, and then you also have the the contracting piece, which is just it's a regular job, a career. that piece was actually really hard to figure out. It was easier because I was at Carson and I knew folks, and it made it easier to go. But I know in my hiring process, when I hire folks, that is now what I look back and say, man, I wish I would have known that. But that networking piece is huge. If I know a person, I hired 6 of my guys from my brigade that I knew personally. I was like, that's cool. I want you on my team because I knew how they would work. It didn't matter what their MOS was. It didn't matter about anything else. It was the fact that I knew them, and they were in a position where they wanted to work for me again, so they did. And that's, I think, the biggest thing is understanding how networking works. Not necessarily just go into these networking groups and all this other stuff. That's too canned. You just got to know folks, man, and stick your hand out and say hello. And that I think resonates more because those folks will then say, hey, you know what? I have a friend that's got an opening. Because I do the same thing. I sent a guy down to El Paso to Fort Bliss at our MTC down there, and my buddy he was retiring, and I go, hey, dude, I can get you a job down there if that's where you're retiring to. And he's like, yeah. So he didn't even walked right in the door. 5 days after he got out, he's got a job. Just it was a great thing. And at the end of the day, now I feel like that's kind of where you learn is how to network. Is once you get the job, you are now kind of figuring out where you want to go next. The small business, it was tough for us to make the decision because there's a lot of risk involved. But at the end of the day, we had to front our own money to get started, and then the bank came in after. Everybody wants to help you once you've started something. Nobody wants to help you before. So starting a business is a very scary thing. But at the end of the day, I think if you persevere through it, especially in the military, you got time to save money. You've got some backstops, and they're going to feed you no matter what, right? So at the end of the day, that's the best time to save for something that you want to do later on down the road. I got buddies doing auto detailing out here. There's just all kinds of different, just own businesses, veteran businesses, because the Springs tends to be a spot where a lot of us retire and then we just want to execute, something different. And that's what the business was all about.
I don't know about you guys, but what I spent most of my money on when I was in the Corps was beer. And that would have been really cool to make my own beer. I'd be investing in my future and also having something to, gather my people around. That would have been awesome. In fact, if you would have told me that you could make your own beer when I was 12, oh my God, I would have been a master brewer by the time I was 14.
Well, and that's what we're trying to do with the daughter.
There was no such thing when I was younger. I didn't even know. I had never even heard of what craft brewing is like. This is. I wonder when this actually got started because, my God, man. I mean, there was Bud and Coors and PBR and.
Sam Adams has been around a long time, and Boston Brewing still.
Now it's you got everywhere. Every flavor in the sun, and it's cool that people are taking to this as an art form, which I think you guys have done, man. I mean, I encourage you guys to go to their website if you think I'm joking.
I have a lot of fun on there, so that the clips are a little weird.
I mean, Rich is kind of a celebrity, and he hates his job. He hates doing this, but he has to. He takes a bullet for the family. He has to be the face of the company.
That's what I told the wife. I'm the pretty face. I do all the waving and stuff too. She's.
So tell us about the actual. When did you guys know, hey, I think that, aside from the contest, that Jess was in, guys, I don't drink because I'm a recovering alcoholic, but I drank enough when I was younger for everybody. So everybody, you can all stop now because I drank for everybody. But
soda's too, so it works.
At what point, were you guys making something and you just went, oh my God, I think we're onto something here. This is really good beer.
So, and that's a good question.
I'm full of good questions, Rich.
We've sat down and kind of went through this whole thing. Is hey, when did this happen? Because it ends up being like a blur, and you don't realize when you actually, committed to it. She was making beer for about a year or 2 years, and just my wife takes it seriously. She always says it's her integrity, it's her everything is in that glass. So she takes it very, very seriously. and she did the same thing with hair. So she was like, hey, this person's got to walk away, and I did whatever whatever's in her, hair color, whatever, but she's got to live with that. So the same thing with the beer is, as soon as someone drinks it, they say it's crap. That's on me, So she was here and was like not sharing her beer, and we had a get together, probably about 15, 20 different folks, and by that time we had already kind of met a lot of folks within the industry, the local industry here. So a lot of craft brewing guys that were brewing, a few owners and servers, stuff like that. So they all came over, and Jess whipped out her beer, and they were like, holy crap. They had worked with her. They just never had her stuff. So when she did, she had made a cinnamon beer, and it was amazing. And at that point we were like, well, what do we do with this? And she was like, well, let me try this. I want to make it. And so she started fusing together her palate, and I'm telling you, she can pick out different hops just from the taste of the beer, and like, oh, this is this hop and that hop, and I'm like, dude, I just taste beer. I have no idea what you're talking about. So, but she can nail that stuff down, and so she decided to take things from her culture and kind of add it to the beer. So all of our beers have some kind of like she's done a fresas con crema, so it's an ode to a dessert, or like a Mexican dessert, which is strawberry and cream. And she turned a nitro beer into a strawberry cream ale on nitro. And this thing it's awesome. I mean, it's refreshing because it keeps a tartness to it. She doesn't go with all that sweet stuff. So it's been really neat to watch her grow that way, and it keeps her imagination, like, because she does different series of beers as the wind blows when she gets it inspiration. But we're always constantly thinking about it. That was the thing. It was that moment. They were all like, hey, you've got to do something with this. So we spent the next 4 years, and we literally sat at a table and said, when we were I was about 3 years from getting out or being done. She said, when we're 40, we're going to own a brewery. And when we bought Atrevida, we were turning 41 that year. So we were really, really like, how in the hell did we figure this thing out? And I mean, we just went with it. And again, the business side of the house, it ain't all glorious. I mean, I'm cleaning more toilets now than I did when I was in the military. But you've got to get your hands dirty and be willing to make those sacrifices. I mean, at this point, the brewery is probably 70, 80, 100 hours of our week, and even when we're not working, we're thinking about what's the next thing, or hey, this is an idea for moving forward. So that's what I think is pleasure building, and I think that's where we really, really kind of thrive with that small business is, hey, this is us, we're putting that in a glass and we're handing it out to folks, and hopefully, they're buying it.
Well, I can't imagine how you could be really successful at what you do without really loving it and without it being like your passion. Like I was just telling this story the other day, like, and when my wife wakes up in the morning, if I'm up, I'm watching YouTube about the economy. Like I'm wanting to know what's going on with bonds, with, the Fed and what's happening, in Europe with, geopolitical. And it's not because like, I don't love watching other things, but this is part of what I do. And I love it. It's like, to me, it's fascinating. And good for you that your wife loves to make beer because you love to drink it.
Absolutely. That's my job.
Dude, I just think it's such an incredible story that you guys have. And
I will tell you something. We've always debated this because I always told her, I go, listen, you are working in the thing that you are passionate about. This is you're creative. You love making beer. It's a part of what you found that thing. Everybody's looking for that thing that I can work and have fun at the same time. And it clicked with me that it's not beer, but for me it's about working with folks and leadership. And I think that's what for me the military gave me. It's hard to harness it when you're, the captain of the football team or something like that. But when you're in a military team, you're in it with these guys, and that team it becomes almost like a family. And my wife and I have treated our employees like family, and it's translated. And it sounds weird because everything you do in the military, you're like, oh, that's stupid. I'd never do this if I was a civilian. you take every single thing, every counseling, you run through the gamut of things that you did in the military or had done to you. You're going to do that with your employees. I have fell in love with taking care of soldiers, whether it's, retired, active duty, whatever. I think that is, for me, that's my passion. And that's why I stayed with the defense contracting. I'm really like, at this point, I don't need to do it, but I want to, because for me, it's still keeping me tied into to me, the Army. And that's what's important to me.
That's a really great point. And, I don't know Jess. I have not been fortunate enough to meet her yet, but I got to imagine that I don't know you that well either. But from what I do know about you, from what I've met so far, is that you are like a leader. You're not a shrinking violet. You love helping people. You love putting yourself out there. You love helping veterans. But I think you just love helping people in general, and that's got to be something that your wife really appreciates about you. And I think that's also, if you don't, Nick, I think you would agree with me. That's kind of a common thread that we're running across. Every veteran that we interview that is successful, has that trait in them where they're just like.
It's a bigger purpose, right? It's something above and beyond ourselves, right? Which is what I think each of us got from that time spent in the military, right? It was a bigger purpose. It was for the person to our left and right, not for us, Yeah. I think, Rich, one of the things that you highlighted before too, and I consistently talk about this with folks, the power of networking, right? Frankly, it's the reason that we even have this thing set up right now, right? Barry and I met through networking. Barry's out in Cal. We've yet to actually meet in person, but we've been friends now, close friends now for almost 3 years, Barry.
Yeah.
And again, it's putting.
My God, man, it's been that long, hasn't it?
It's insane. Yeah, we're coming up on the 3-year mark. But again,
do I need to get you like an engagement ring or anything like that?
A promise ring.
Isn't 3 years paper? I don't know.
It's got to be. I'll have to look that up as soon as we're done.
I don't know. I heard that on a show once. I thought it was funny. That's good.
Well, and so Rich, in terms of networking now, I'm sure that you are networking within the brewing community, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've hired people out of the brewery for the defense contracting piece because I'm talking to a kid that's getting out, and he's like, "Man, I'd love to do this kind of thing." I said, "Well, that's good, but I can get you a job right now, and that'll help you as and they're tech jobs." So and we talked about this before. I'm big on now the certifications. So if these guys get certs before they get out of the military, you're going to make so much more money. And the degree, everybody wants to get out and go to the 4-year college. And honestly, I don't even look at it anymore in the resumes. I'm looking for your certs. And I think a lot of folks are missing the boat there. These young kids understand it. I hope that they're getting after it. They already know how to run the computer inside and out. Yeah. The question is, can you get certified so that somebody can say, yes, that person can work on my stuff? That was huge. So the networking piece for me has allowed me to work both ends because you always run into the folks that you least expect when you're in the weirdest of moments. Yeah, I'll be at a beer fest and they're like, "Hey, you're a vet. Hey, I gotta," and then we'll start going into this stuff and we end up on a on a TV show or a news thing or whatever. But it blows my mind how fast, because my wife and I got involved with a bunch of local groups. And it's the Chamber of Commerce's, all these things, and it's not hard work. You just got to show up, and folks are willing to help you. They're like, "Oh, what do you do?" "Well, we got a brewery." "Oh, crap, I didn't know. Let's go." So they're doing their meetings at your place, and you're able to make some changes, or at least pursue things outside of whatever it is that you do. Craft beer for us is a launch pad into the community, so we're able to do things for folks. We fundraisers. My wife's doing right now, she's got a thing for the beer, like $1 of each beer. If a certain beer sold is going for kids at a local school to get pumpkins for Halloween. And I'm like, when was I going to ever do that in my life? And be able to contribute to my community in these awesome different programs. And my wife does. Me and her both reach out to folks that way, and then we try and bring some money back. I'm not in this to be a millionaire. I'm not in this to win, the race against Stone Brewing or Boston Brewing Company. We're in it as a family to kind of give back. We know what we were fortunate to have with a military, career, taking us all over the place, and to survive, to go through those combat things, and to come out and you just want to do stuff that kind of has an impact. You don't want to just be there, and wither away. So that's kind of what we ran with. I always say that the families go through it just like we do. And she's gone through, numerous deployments and FRGs and all this stuff where she's working with families and leading those families. And I told her that's why you're so good at what you do. Your employees don't leave. We've been open for almost 5 years, and we've had, of our 6 employees, 3 of them have been there from the beginning. And we're a small business, so we're supposed to be turning over every 6 months, maybe. Kids just wanted to get in there and get out. And she has retained her employees, and that doesn't include my daughter. So I was like, that's the difference. And I think I always mention this to her too, is that last 1% of your product is you. And that's what makes your product different. A beer is a beer. At the end of the day, anybody can take a recipe and make a beer. Anybody can take a recipe and feed you. But that last 1% of what you're putting into that product is what separates you, and that's what makes you, the better option. And I asked that question in interviews for the defense contract. I'm like, hey, what separates you from what everybody else is interviewing today? And nobody can really answer that question, because everybody wants to say the right thing, when at the end of the day, you should be looking at, how do I project myself to others so that they want to be part of whatever it is I'm doing? That's really what you're selling at networking. It has nothing to do with what opportunities you have. It has everything to do with, I want to be part of that experience with that person.
Absolutely.
Well, getting back to that networking thing, one of the other things that I'd like to point out that I think, Nick, you brought this up to me. Like, when Nick reached out to me originally, I thought I was super special, that I was the only one he wanted to meet, but it turned out he invited several other people, for a meeting, and I was the only fool who took him up on it. But as a result, we've given each other thousands of dollars worth of business back and forth to each other. And so if you are getting out of the military and you're wondering what is all this networking about? What it's about, man, is just taking an interest in somebody else for longer than, an hour, just to step outside of yourself and not to try and sell them on you. Find out about them, because that's what really Nick and I did. Is like, we're just like, after 5 minutes, we're like, did we just become best friends? Like, like we were just,
you do so many activities.
We were tracking each other, and we're just like, okay, well, we don't know where this is going to go, but we clearly should be meeting on the regular. And like, we do that with everybody now. Like, this is one of the things like we're trying to do with you, Rich. We want to just find out about you. We want you to be able to help anybody who might be watching this by inspiring them. And anybody who's watching this, instead of just saying hi to somebody, when you meet somebody a little interesting, try and find out a little bit more about them. Find out why they're successful. Find out, some of the challenges that they've been up against, because you know what? You might learn something, and you never know. Maybe you might be the one teaching that other person something. So, man, we cannot stress how important networking is to those younger people that are getting out of the military right now, or just in general. I don't think there's no courses that I ever heard about. No. When I got separated, about networking. I did have a mentor when I got out of the Marine Corps for a brief period, who kind of took me under his wing unwittingly. He was a Marine Corps recon captain, but I didn't even recognize until about 6 months later, hey, this guy's kind of my mentor. Like, I didn't go, hey, can you be my mentor? But it starts with just kind of trying to, get outside of yourself for a minute and try and find out about this new person that you just met. If they're interesting, there's a good chance they want to talk about themselves. So open up your ears and listen.
The hard part is just saying hello, and you're right. And the thing with the brewery, I'm as much as I am an extrovert, and I love working with folks. I have a hard time with that intro, and it's like, how you doing? And now you can't shut me up. I'm at the grocery store and I'm talking to a guy about what he's buying or something. And we ended up talking about, he was a defense contractor too, and vet and all this stuff. So you running through all these things and hey, look, I'll never run into the guy again. But for the 5 minutes, we both had a chance and opportunity to exchange something and see where it goes from there. I'm never in a position where I would not hand somebody my card. Hey, here's the card to the brewery. Come check us out. And it's not necessarily for that. It's for that, hey, maybe this person's got something else going on and whatever, or they're looking for a beer to just do their wedding. I don't know. You don't know until you talk to folks. And that's what I like about the brewery. We're able to talk to folks at the tables and, hey, how you doing? What's going on? And then once you get their story, then you can run from there, and that's networking is not selling. It's a I don't know, emerging of ideas,
mutually beneficial, right? Like relationship, and Barry and I, we were very fortunate to have been a part of an organization in which kind of facilitated our connection. And one of the ideologies is giver's gain, right? Like instead of thinking, what am I going to get out of this? Focusing on the value that I can deliver instead, and just putting it out there. Like things are naturally going to come back, right? Like in networking, it's not just who you know, it's who you know that likes you, right?
Yeah.
And if you're constantly leading by trying to be that resource and help, it's all going to come back to you at some point anyway.
Yeah.
But just leading with that true intent, I think is absolutely important, right? Like you can't go in there expecting like, what can I get? You've got to give in order to receive.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, guys, we're over the 30-minute mark at this point. I think we could probably go for another half hour, but I think that we did a lot. We said a lot, and Rich, I just think you're awesome, man. I'm sure that Jess is awesome too, and can't thank you enough for joining us today. We'd like to check in with you periodically, and see how your business is growing, and just catch up with you and hear some more stories.
So Jess just walked in, so there you go. You guys get a chance to meet.
Well, we don't need to talk to you anymore. We just need Jess.
Yeah, I know. She's the famous one, but she's getting ready to go. I just wanted to give her an opportunity to say hello.
Well, we've been talking about you for the last half hour, so it's only apropos that you step in and say hi.
Yeah, she can't hear a thing you just said. I got the headphones in, so she's.
Okay.
Yeah,
Tell her.
but
she'll watch the video later.
Yeah, I know she will. All right, thanks.
Rich, just as we're wrapping up, if folks want to find you and stop by the brewery, have a drink, what's the best way to learn more about your business?
AtrevidaBeerCo.com. So and that's our handle for all our social media, everything. So if you Google Atrevida or you Google my name and my wife's name, we'll pop all our media stuff will pop up.
We'll make sure that we include that on the video.
Yeah. So thank you. I appreciate it. And that's what's fun for us is kind of getting out there and doing some kind of fun stuff on the web. Interwebs.
There we go. And if you're looking for them, you can get there as well through our Instagram on the Veterans Wealth Network Instagram. We're followed back and forth, right? So Rich, absolute pleasure. Thank you again for taking the time to connect today. I'm looking forward to continuing to cross paths, brother.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, guys.
And for all of you, don't forget to go to see Rich. If you're Rich, you're in Colorado Springs, right?
Yeah, Colorado Springs.
Man, forget about every place else in Colorado Springs. The only place you want to go is to go see Rich at Atrevida Beer Company. And then you can go to Royal Gorge and the Garden of the Gods and all that. But you want to go there first. But then also don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell. Thanks, everybody. Hope everybody stays happy and healthy and safe.
Thanks, guys.